Hello and welcome to this short video looking at nutritional advice around the world. Plates, pyramids, pagodas, these are some of the visual motifs that are used around the world to produce public health messages concerned with health and healthy eating. They categorise food into different food groups and suggest the amount we should eat in each food group. There are many around the world, and we'll have a look at them and also do a little bit of a comparison of China and the UK. This lecture was originally given in China. I'm giving the reverse version of this. And if you're wondering about what the background noises are, it's because it's raining very heavily outside and also blowing a bit of a gale. Around the world, governments have developed advice about what makes a healthy diet. You often put this advice in the form of a picture showing what types of food and how much of each type of food we should eat for good health. Before we go on, we should probably define some of the terms we're going to use. In science, it's always important to make sure we're very clear about what we are saying. We need to be as clear as possible about what we're saying to other people who may not know as much about the subject as we do. First, what do we mean by healthy eating? It isn't about going on a diet because you want to lose weight. People who diet usually don't stay on the diet for very long. A healthy diet is about lifestyle. So it isn't just for a short time, but it's about how you live your life over many years. What do we mean by health? This is the most well-known definition of health. It's produced by the World Health Organization in 1946 and hasn't changed since. It's sometimes criticised for being unrealistic and a bit utopian. How many people do you know who are completely healthy? And for that matter, how would you define completely healthy? Sarachi, writing in the British Medical Journal in 1997, suggested people around the world have a right to expect good health and suggested this definition. And it has been suggested this is perhaps a little bit more practical than WHO one. Different perspectives can be useful. Native Australians define health as not just individual health, but the social, emotional and cultural well-being of the whole community. They would suggest that also has echoes in public health and certainly areas such as the Marmot Report in the UK. Now, so what's a food group? We often in science need to be specific about how we define things, even though it may seem pretty clear to people outside science. So you might want to have a think about how you would define a food group to a friend or relative who doesn't know much about nutrition science. How do we distinguish between them? How would we categorise foods rigorously into these groups? The list I've got there is a common way of classifying the food groups. Sometimes you might see fruit and vegetables in separate categories, and meat and fish might also be separated. In different parts of the world, people eat different amounts in the food groups. For example, in the United Kingdom, we eat much less fish than people in China. Conversely, we eat a lot more meat than they do, although that is changing as China's nutritional profile changes as it becomes in some respects more westernised. The idea of a food pyramid has been used in many countries around the world. Conceptually, they're often pretty similar. At the base of the pyramid are those foods which should make up the most of our diet, and as we ascend the pyramid, the amounts of the various food categories fall, suggesting they should be less important in our diet. In many cases, like Spain at the top left here, a pyramid is actually used, but not always. In the United Kingdom we use the eat well plate, and in China there is an elegant pagoda. Whatever picture is used, it is the same idea. There are some foods which should make up a lot of our diet, and other foods we should eat less of for good health. So let's have a look at the food pagoda from China. There are 5 levels, indicating the different amounts needed in the daily diet. Cereals and potatoes are the most important group and make up the base of the pagoda. Notice also that water is included in the image as well. Human beings are mostly water, and we need to drink enough to stay properly hydrated. And there's also a picture of someone running to remind people of the importance of regular exercise. Vegetables and fruit are the second most important group, followed by important sources of protein like meat, fish and shrimps. Notice also the Chinese recommendation is to consume between 500 and 700 grams of fruit and vegetables a day. Next up the pyramid are milk products, nuts and bean products. And finally, we have the smallest group, fats and oils. They're needed in the diet, but only in relatively small amounts. This is the United Kingdom eat well plate. Here the recommendation is that fruit and vegetables should make up about a third of what we eat. Another third should come from starchy food like bread, pasta and rice, about 15% from milk and dairy foods. A little less of that should be from non-milk sources of protein like meat, fish and eggs. And finally, and again, we should only eat a small amount of food containing lots of fats and or sugar. It's probably worth mentioning the plate doesn't have any advice on drinking water or taking exercise. This is the plate as a pie. A pie without a lot of useful information like percentages, so we'll move on to the actual percentages. If you add them up, you'll discover they add up to 101%. This is just due to rounding up. As well as the Eat Well plate, the government also recommends we should eat 5 portions a day of fruit or vegetables. The portion is about 80 grams. So 5 portions works out as about 400 grams of fruit and vegetables a day, which is quite a lot less than the Chinese recommendation, which suggested between 500 and 700 grams. So a few pyramids around the world, starting with the French. The French climb the stairs from only eating a small amount of meat and fish to eating lots of fruit and vegetables. And the picture also includes physical activity and reminds people who drink enough water. The Germans have a complicated looking three-dimensional pyramid. Probably just complicated looking, but actually complicated. The 4 sides of the pyramid represent different food groups. On the bottom of the pyramid is a circle which shows how much of each group people should eat. The advice from Hungary is substantially simpler. Finally, the pyramid from Spain. This includes quite a lot of olive oil in the second tier of the pyramid. It reminds people of physical activity and drinking enough water again. These are just some of the different food pyramids from around the world. When you start to look at them, you'll see they're sometimes quite different from each other. My students should certainly think about this. What reasons are there for different pyramids to be in use around the world? Not just in terms of the graphical model, but the actual nutritional advice that they present. If you want to see some more examples, this web page includes quite a few more food pyramids from around the world, including the Japanese spinning top. It's often interesting to compare different parts of the world. Different diets from different parts of the world can tell us interesting things about public health. And in some cases, for example, the diet of a country is known to be changing. You can produce some useful insights. For example, if the country starts to adopt a Western style diet, what health problems can we anticipate? So this is just a quick look at the differences and similarities between the UK food pyramid and the Chinese food pagoda. As mentioned earlier on, the Chinese recommendations for fruit and vegetables are significantly higher than those for the UK. Conversely, the recommendation in the UK for foods and drinks high in fats and or sugar is very much higher than that for China. Although the pyramids and plates are intended to improve healthy eating habits, they do take into consideration the diet of the country which they're designed for. China has a very rich traditional cooking with important regional variations, and the pagoda represents this. So here we have a picture of a very nice Chinese tofu dish with lots of vegetables. This picture includes some English bloke who's about to be offered the frog dish. The UK pyramid is also meant to be practical for people. If it is too far away from many people's diets, it will be hard for them to follow it as an eating guide, and hence the relatively high amounts of foods containing high amounts of fat and sugar. Ideally, we should have less, but this is a practical guide based on what our national diet is. The 5-a-day campaign encourages people with 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. The portion is about 80 grams. And this is just a summary of information using Tableau Public, which can be linked to by that link or that QR code. It's not a dynamic one, it's just something I put together when I was developing this lecture. Okay, thanks for listening. Hope that was useful.